He never expected anything unusual that night. The road was quiet, just like it always was. The snow fell slowly, covering the ground in a soft white sheet. He had driven this route countless times before. Same turns, same silence, same heavy feeling in his chest that never really went away. It had been years since anyone rode in that car with him. He liked it that way, or at least that's what he told himself. After the divorce, he got used to the quiet, got used to the stillness of driving alone, no conversations, no interruptions, just the hum of the engine and the sound of tires crunching over snow. But that night felt different. Maybe it was the cold, maybe it was something else, something in his gut. He couldn't explain it, but a strange tension hung in the air. Like something was about to happen. Up ahead, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a shadow, maybe a trick of the lights. But as he got closer, he slowed down. There, by the side of the road, stood a woman. She had no coat, just a thin sweater that clung to her, soaked with snow. And beside her, a small boy, no older than 6 or 7. The kid was shivering so hard his arms shook with every breath. They both looked like they'd been out there for hours. He slowed the car to a crawl. His first instinct? Keep going. It wasn't safe to stop for strangers, especially not at night, especially not now. You just didn't know what people were capable of anymore, but something about them made him hesitate. The woman didn't wave, didn't shout. She just stood there, holding the boy close, trying to shield him from the freezing wind. Her eyes met his for only a second. They didn't plead, they didn't demand. But in them he saw something that twisted his chest. Desperation, yes, but something else too. Something quieter. Like she had run out of hope, long before she ran out of options. He pulled over, slowly. The tires crunched against the icy edge of the road. He rolled down the window just enough to speak. "You okay?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. The woman nodded, almost out of reflex, but her lips trembled too hard to speak. The boy leaned into her side, his teeth chattering, loud enough to hear. "Where are you headed?" She looked down, then whispered, "Just somewhere warm." He paused. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he was waiting for her to say more. Maybe he wanted a reason to drive away, but he didn't. He unlocked the door instead. "Get in," he said. She hesitated for only a second, then opened the door and helped the boy climb in first. She followed, carefully, quietly, as if afraid to leave behind any trace of herself. The car filled with the scent of snow and damp fabric. Neither of them said a word as he pulled back onto the road. The boy let out a soft sigh. Not of comfort, just relief. He turned the heater up. The woman hugged the child tighter. Still no questions, no names, no stories, just silence. But it wasn't the same kind of silence he was used to. This one was heavier. It filled the car, like fog. He glanced at the woman again. Her face was pale, eyes dark with exhaustion, hair messy, damp from the snow. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. The boy coughed, a dry, sharp sound. The woman gently rubbed his back, whispering, something too low to hear. He thought about asking what happened, where they came from, why they were out there in the middle of nowhere with no coats, no bags, nothing. But something told him not to. Not yet. Not until she was ready. "I live just 10 minutes from here," he said. "It's warm. You can stay the night, just until you figure things out." The woman didn't answer at first. Then, in a hoarse whisper, she said, "Thank you." That was it. 2 words, but he heard everything in them. Fear, gratitude, guilt, maybe even shame. He didn't know her story, didn't know why she was out there or what she was running from, but he knew this much. No one ends up on the side of that road on a night like this unless they have nowhere else to go. As the house came into view, he felt a strange pull in his chest. He'd never brought anyone there, not since his wife left. Not since the son they adopted grew up and moved away. The house had stayed quiet for years, cold in its own way, even when the heater worked. He pulled into the driveway and turned. Off the engine. For a moment none of them moved. Then the boy spoke softly, just one word. "Home?" The woman tensed. The man looked at her. She looked away. He opened his door. "Let's go inside." She stepped out, holding the boy's hand tightly. The man led them up the path, his boots crunched against the snow. The porch light flickered as he unlocked the door. As it swung open, a wave of warmth met them. The woman gasped quietly. The boy's eyes lit up just a little. The man stepped aside and let them in. He didn't know what to expect next. He didn't know who they really were or why they had ended up in front of him that night. But something told him this wasn't just a chance meeting. Something was about to change. He closed the door behind them, and for a moment the only sound was the gentle tick of the hallway clock. The warmth of the house wrapped around them slowly, like a blanket that had been waiting just for them. The woman stood near the entrance, uncertain, her arms protectively around the boy. She didn't take off her shoes, didn't move further in, just stood there dripping melted snow onto the mat. "You can sit," he said softly, motioning to the couch in the living room. She gave a small nod and guided the boy toward it. The child climbed up without a word, curling his knees to his chest and leaning against his mother's side. His eyes looked heavy but alert, as if he couldn't relax just yet, as if he still wasn't sure if this place was safe. The man stepped into the kitchen. He didn't say anything, just moved around quietly as if not to spook them. A few minutes later he came back with 2 steaming mugs of cocoa and a bowl of crackers. He placed them on the coffee table. The woman stared at the mugs, her hands gripping her knees. "It's just cocoa," he said with a soft chuckle. "No tricks." She gave a tight smile and nodded. The boy reached for a cracker first. Then the cocoa. His small hands shook as he lifted the mug. She helped him, guiding it to his lips. The man sat in the armchair across from them. He didn't ask anything. He didn't press. He just watched the steam rise and listened to the sound of the child sipping. After a while, the boy's shoulders seemed to relax. The woman looked less tense, though her eyes still scanned the room like she was waiting for something to go wrong. He glanced at the fireplace, then stood to light it. The soft crackle of the flames filled the space. A warm glow danced across the walls. "You can stay in the guest room tonight," he said, breaking the silence. "It's not much, but the bed's clean. I'll get some blankets." Again she only nodded. He disappeared down the hallway, returning with an armful of folded bedding. He laid it on the back of the couch. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice barely there. He paused for a moment, watching her. "You don't have to tell me anything," he said, "but if you want to talk, I'm here." She didn't reply, but her expression shifted, just a little. Her guard, still up, showed the tiniest crack. He stood up and headed toward his own room. "Good night," he said over his shoulder. She looked at the boy. He was already falling asleep, his head on her lap. That night the man lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house felt different, not bad, just not as empty. The quiet wasn't so heavy. For the first time in a long time, he wondered what it would feel like to have someone else under the same roof again. He thought about the woman, about the boy, about the look in her eyes when she saw the photo on the mantel. It was a simple picture. A little boy in a blue sweater, grinning wide, missing a front tooth. It had sat there for years. Dust gathered around the edges. He hadn't moved it. Couldn't. Not because he was sentimental, but because he didn't want to disturb the last good thing that had happened in that house. The boy in the photo had grown up, gone to college. They still talked, not often, but enough. The house had been his childhood home. And for the man, raising him had been the one time life made sense. The boy wasn't his by blood, but none of that mattered. From the moment they brought him home as a baby, he had become everything. And now here was another child, curled up on the same couch where his son once built pillow forts. Another young face looking for safety. He didn't know what this meant, or why he felt a strange ache in his chest. But something about this night felt like a thread was being pulled, slowly unraveling pieces he thought had been long tucked away. The next morning, the smell of toast and coffee filled the kitchen. The man had woken early, old habits. He didn't want to wake them, but he also wanted to make sure breakfast was ready if they stayed. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw the woman standing in the doorway. She looked different in the morning light. Her face was still tired, but there was a trace of calm in her eyes now. She watched him silently for a moment. "I didn't sleep much," she said finally. "Me neither," he replied. She stepped forward, glancing at the table. "You didn't have to make all this." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." The boy wandered in behind her, rubbing his eyes. He looked at the toast, then at the man, and gave the smallest smile. "You like peanut?" "Butter?" the man asked. The boy nodded. He slid the plate toward him. They sat together for a while, not really talking, just eating, breathing in the warmth, letting it settle. Then the woman's eyes drifted across the room, to the photo on the mantel. She stood up slowly, walked to it, and picked it up with both hands. Her lips parted, but no words came. The man watched her. She looked at the photo like it was something fragile, like it hurt to see it, but she couldn't look away. Her hand trembled. She turned to him and asked very quietly, "Where did you get this?" He didn't answer right away. Her voice had shifted, still quiet but heavier now, like every word was holding back something bigger. He stepped closer, his hands in his pockets, watching her as she stared at the photo. She was still holding it carefully like it was made of glass. Her thumb brushed over the boy's face, tracing the curve of his smile. "I adopted him," the man finally said. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Years ago." She looked up at him, eyes wide, blinking. "Fast where?" she asked. Her hands tightened slightly around the frame. He exhaled slowly, as if pulling the memory from somewhere deep. "It was a private adoption," he said, "through an agency. My wife and I had been trying to have a child for years. When that didn't work, we decided to adopt. We got the call one morning. A baby boy had been left at the hospital, no name, no contact, nothing." Her knees gave out a little, and she sank onto the edge of the couch, still holding the photo. "No name?" she asked. He shook his head. "Just a note. It said, 'Please give him a better life than I ever could.' That was it. We named him Jacob." Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together, but they started to fall anyway, one by one, trailing down her cheeks. "That was me," she said, barely above a whisper. "I left that note." The words hung in the air like they didn't belong in the room. The man froze, his breath catching. "What did you say?" he asked, stunned. She looked up, her face pale, hands trembling around the frame. "I was young, barely 18. His father, he was dangerous, controlling. I was scared. I didn't want my baby to grow up in that kind of life." Her voice cracked as she spoke, each sentence breaking a little more. "He told me I had to get rid of him, said he wouldn't raise someone else's mistake." The man stood still, his heart pounding louder than the ticking clock behind them. "I snuck out to the hospital," she continued. "I waited until I was sure no one would see me. I wrapped him in my old coat and left him by the emergency entrance. I watched from across the street until someone found him. Then I ran." The room felt colder somehow, not from the weather, but from the weight of what she was saying. Her fingers gently touched the photo again. "I never forgot his face," she said. "Even after all these years, I saw him in my dreams. I wondered what kind of life he had, if someone loved him, if he ever asked where he came from." The man sat down slowly in the chair across from her. He didn't speak. Couldn't. His mind raced through every memory. Holding that baby for the first time, reading bedtime stories, walking him to school, every scraped knee, every proud moment, all of it, now tangled in a story he never saw coming. "He was my world," he said quietly. "Even after my wife left, even when things got hard, he kept me going." Tears filled her eyes again. "You raised him?" "I did," he said. "I did my best. He's in college now. Pre-med. Wants to be a pediatrician." She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to muffle the sob that escaped. "He's okay?" she asked. "He's more than okay," the man said. "He turned out to be kind, smart, everything I ever hoped he'd be." She closed her eyes, letting that truth sink in. For years she had carried the guilt, the fear, the not knowing. And now here was the answer she never thought she'd get. The boy, her son, was safe, loved, alive. "I never thought I'd see anything connected to him again," she said. let alone be in your house." The man looked at her, still trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. "You didn't come here on purpose," he said, more to himself than to her. "You didn't know this was my home." She shook her head. "We were just trying to get away. I had no plan, no direction. Just needed to keep my boy warm, that's all." Silence fell again, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was full of something else. Shock, yes, but also awe. Something too strange, too perfect to explain. "You said his name is Jacob?" she asked. He nodded. "He's coming home next week, for winter break." Her eyes widened. "Does he know him anything?" The man paused. "We told him what the agency told us, that he was abandoned at birth. He asked questions growing up. But I never had the answers." She stared into the fire. For a long moment, her mind clearly turning over possibilities. "I don't know if I should see him," she said. "I gave him up. I don't know if he'd want to know me." The man studied her face. It was tired, worn down by years of running and regret, but it was also honest, raw, real. "You gave him up to protect him," he said. "That matters." She nodded slowly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her sweater. The boy on the couch stirred, opening his eyes just enough to look at the two adults. His mother pulled him gently onto her lap and kissed his forehead. The man watched them quietly. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but something deep inside him, the same instinct that made him stop his car the night before, told him this was just the beginning. The next few days passed slowly, as if time itself didn't quite know what to do with what had happened. The woman and her son stayed in the guest room, quiet, polite, always careful not to be in the way. She cooked when she could, helped clean without being asked. She didn't talk much, but her presence started to settle into the space like the furniture. Familiar, steady. The man found himself watching them when they weren't looking. Not out of suspicion, but curiosity. Wonder. He had spent so many years in silence with nothing but memories and old routines. Now there were footsteps in the hallway again, a child's voice humming softly in the background, the clink of dishes being washed by hands that didn't belong to him. It was strange and comforting. The boy, Eli, as she'd told him, was shy but sweet. He followed his mother everywhere at first, but slowly began to loosen. He explored the house in cautious steps, discovered the back porch, asked questions with wide eyes. One afternoon, he found an old board game in the closet and asked if they could play. The man smiled and said yes. They played for nearly 2 hours. Eli laughed. The woman smiled more that day than he had seen since they arrived. It had been a long time since anyone laughed in that house, but even with the warmth returning, a quiet tension hung in the air. They were all waiting, though none of them said it out loud, waiting for Jacob. The woman still hadn't decided if she would tell him. Every day she went back and forth. Sometimes she seemed hopeful, other times terrified. "What if he hates me?" she asked one evening, her voice low and uncertain. "What if he thinks I'm just showing up now because I regret it?" The man looked at her, his hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "He's not that kind of person," he said. "He's kind, he listens. He's always been curious about where he came from." "But he has a life," she said, rubbing her hands together nervously. "He has you. He doesn't need me. He set the mug down. Maybe not, but maybe he deserves the truth. You both do." She nodded, but the fear in her eyes didn't fade. Then the day arrived. The driveway crunched with fresh snow as Jacob's car pulled in. The man stood at the window, watching it all with a strange mix of pride and dread. He hadn't told Jacob anything. He figured it wasn't his place. This wasn't news to break over the phone. This was something that needed to be felt, seen. The woman stood in the kitchen, frozen, wiping her hands on a towel. Eli was by her side, clutching her hand, not fully understanding but sensing the weight in the room. The door opened. "Hey, Dad," came the familiar voice. Deeper now, but still warm. Still his. He walked in carrying a backpack, brushing snow off his jacket. He looked taller than the last time, older, but his smile hadn't changed. Then he stopped. His eyes landed on the woman first. Then the boy. He looked back at his father, confused. Is everything okay?" The man stepped forward slowly. "Jacob, this is Anna, and this is Eli." Jacob glanced back at them, still uncertain. He gave a polite nod, still waiting for an explanation. The woman stepped forward. Her hands shook. "I'm sorry," she said. Jacob tilted his head. "Sorry?" She took a deep breath. "I know this is strange, and I didn't come here to mess up your life or confuse you." Jacob looked at his dad again, eyebrows raised. The man gave him a quiet look that said, "Let her speak." "I'm your birth mother," she said. The words landed like a drop in still water, soft but impossible to ignore. Jacob blinked. His eyes darted between her and his dad. "What?" She nodded, her voice barely holding together. "I was young, scared. I had no support. I did the only thing I thought would give you a chance. I left you at the hospital. I left a note." Jacob stared at her. His face was unreadable. "I didn't know what happened to you after that," she continued. "I never imagined I'd end up here. I didn't plan this, I swear. Your father—" She stopped, corrected herself. "He picked us up when we were stranded. I didn't know you were his son, not until I saw your picture." The silence that followed felt thick, heavy. Jacob looked down at the floor, then back at his dad. "Is it true?" The man nodded. "I didn't know either, not until she told me, but yes, I think it is." Jacob turned toward her again. His mouth opened, then closed. He rubbed his forehead, trying to process. "Why? Now?" he asked. She swallowed. "It wasn't supposed to be now or ever. I thought I'd never see you again. But when I did, I just wanted you to know the truth." Jacob stood there for a long time. Then, without warning, he sat down on the couch, not angry, not smiling, just overwhelmed. Eli looked up at him. "You're my brother?" he asked quietly. Jacob stared at the small boy. "I guess I am," he said softly. Eli grinned. Then, in that innocent way children have, he walked over and sat beside him. Jacob didn't stop him. The woman wiped her face with trembling fingers, her breath uneven. Jacob looked up at her, still unsure. But his voice was calm when he spoke again. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied. He nodded slowly. Then finally looked at her, not as a stranger, but with something else, something new, something beginning. That evening, the house was quieter than usual, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind of quiet. It was the kind where everyone was deep in thought, letting the weight of the day settle. Jacob sat at the kitchen table, slowly stirring his tea, though it had already gone cold. Across from him, Anna sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes kept flicking toward him, then away, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to look too long. Eli had fallen asleep early, worn out from the emotions of the day. He lay curled on the couch, a blanket tucked under his chin, his small breath soft and steady. The man, his adoptive father, the only father Jacob had ever known, stood near the fireplace, poking at the coals, even though they didn't really need it. Jacob finally broke the silence. "I used to wonder," he said, still looking down into his cup. "Not all the time, but sometimes. I'd think about it, where I came from, why I was left, what you looked like." Hannah didn't move, but her fingers tightened. "I imagined 100 different versions," he said, voice calm. "Some were angry, some were sad, but none of them ever ended with you walking into my house one day. I never thought I'd get the chance," she said softly. "I thought maybe you hated me, that maybe you'd think I didn't love you." He looked up at her then, his eyes steady. "I don't hate you." She blinked quickly, tears forming again. "You don't?" He shook his head. "No, I don't understand everything yet. But I don't hate you." Her shoulders slumped, just slightly, as if those words alone lifted a burden she'd been carrying for nearly 2 decades. "I know I gave you up," she said, voice trembling. "But I never stopped wondering. Every birthday, every holiday, I thought of you. I didn't know if you were safe. I didn't know if someone had loved you. And then suddenly, there you were, grown, alive, sitting in front of me. The man by the fire finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "You did love him," he said. "That much is clear." Anna looked at him. "I tried to do what was best. I was just a scared girl. And now, it feels like I missed everything." Jacob leaned back in his chair. "You did miss a lot, but I'm here now and so are you." Anna's breath hitched and she nodded. He gave a small smile. "It's going to take time." "I know, but I want to know more about you, about what happened. Not just why you left me, but who you are." That surprised her. She had come expecting judgment, maybe rejection, but not this. Not curiosity. "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "Start with your name," he said almost playfully. "You never said your last name." She laughed softly, wiping her cheek. "Anna Collins." "Collins," he repeated. "Okay. That's a start," she smiled, unsure whether she had permission to enjoy the moment, but letting herself smile anyway. "I grew up in a small town," she said, her voice more relaxed now. "Very strict home. I made one mistake, and it changed everything. My parents told me I had brought shame on the family. I was told to fix it quietly. That meant no baby, no future, just silence." Jacob listened without interrupting. "I stayed at a shelter for a while," she continued, "but I knew I couldn't keep you safe on my own. I was afraid your father would find us, so I gave you up. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it haunted me." Jacob leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "And Eli's father?" She hesitated. "That was different. I thought I'd made a better choice. He seemed kind at first, but people change, or maybe they just stop pretending. I left when Eli was 4, been moving ever since." "Is he looking for you?" "I don't think so," she said, shaking her head. "We were nothing to him." The room grew still again, but this time it wasn't heavy, it was thoughtful, open. Jacob glanced toward the hallway. "He's a good kid," Anna smiled. "He is. He deserves more than the life I've given him. So far." The man stepped away from the fireplace and sat down with them. "Then maybe it's time to stop running." She looked at both of them. "I want that. I just don't know how." Jacob looked around the house. "We could figure it out, together." She blinked, surprised by his words. "I'm not saying I suddenly know what this all means," he said, "but I've got room for more people in my life. It's not just about biology or history, it's about what we do now." Her eyes shimmered with tears again, but this time she didn't look away. The clock ticked gently in the background. The fire crackled. The house, once filled with silence and routine, now held something new. Not just voices, but connection. Uncertainty, yes, but also hope. Jacob stood, stretched, and gave a soft sigh. "I'm heading to bed." Anna rose too. "Okay." He paused before walking away, then turned to her. "Maybe tomorrow. You can tell me more?" She nodded. "I'd like that." He gave her a nod and disappeared down the hallway. Hannah stood for a moment, then looked at the man across the table. "You raised a good man," she said. He smiled faintly. "He raised me too, in a way." Anna walked over to check on Eli. She knelt by the couch and brushed the hair from his forehead. He didn't stir. The man watched her from where he sat, something warm flickering behind his eyes. No one said a word, but no one needed to. The next morning came quietly. Snow had fallen again overnight, and the world outside was blanketed in a soft, untouched white. The kind of morning that made everything feel paused, still, calm, and a little fragile. Anna stood by the window, holding a cup of coffee, watching the flakes drift down. She wasn't sure how long she'd been standing there. Her mind was full, not in a chaotic way, but in a slow, steady hum of thoughts she didn't want to rush. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of life beginning. The rustle of bedsheets, the distant creak of the floorboards, the low murmur of someone starting a shower. Eli sat at the kitchen table, eating cereal in his usual quiet way. He'd grown, comfortable in the house. He no longer clung to her side every moment, and she noticed that. The safety of this place had settled into him, giving him space to just be a kid again. The man, Jacob's father, was already outside, shoveling snow from the walkway. He did it like he did everything else, without complaint, without hurry, just steady and present. She admired that about him. He didn't fill silence with words. He filled it with warmth, patience, and a kind of strength she hadn't been around in years. When Jacob came into the kitchen, he looked rested, though his eyes still held a trace of everything he was processing. He offered her a small smile, as he poured himself a cup of coffee. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, her voice soft but steady. He sat across from her and took a sip, looking out the window for a moment before turning back to her. "So, I've been thinking," he began. "About everything." She set her cup down gently, waiting. "I don't know where this leads," he continued, "but I'm not shutting the door on it. I want to take it slow, but I also don't want to pretend this didn't happen." Anna nodded. "I understand. And I don't want to rush anything either. She paused, took a breath. "I just want to be around, if that's okay. Not to fix the past. Just to be here." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's fair." They both sat in silence again, but this time it felt comfortable, like something had shifted just slightly in the right direction. After breakfast, they all bundled up and went outside. Eli ran around in the snow, laughing and tossing snowballs at the tree trunks. For a while it was just that. Laughter, cold air, and the crunch of boots in fresh snow. The kind of joy that didn't ask questions, that didn't need history or explanations. Anna stood beside Jacob as they watched Eli build a small snow. "Fort by the fence, he reminds me of you," she said without thinking. Jacob glanced at her. "How would you know?" She smiled. "I remember you as a baby. I know it sounds impossible, but I do. Your eyes were always wide, like you were taking in everything. And now, watching Eli, it's that same look, that quiet alertness." Jacob didn't answer right away, but he didn't look away either. "Can I ask you something?" he finally said. "Of course. If life had gone differently, if you'd kept me, what would it have looked like?" She turned toward him, her breath catching. "I've imagined that every day, but the truth is I don't know. I think about it, and sometimes I see us happy, but other times I see struggle, fear. I was in no place to raise a child, and even if I had tried, I don't know if I could have kept you safe." He nodded slowly. "It's weird, isn't it? Two completely different lives, one decision, two versions of me." Anna's voice dropped. "I used to wonder if I did the right thing. Some days I believed I had. Other days I hated myself." Jacob looked at her. "I don't hate you." "I know," she said quietly. "And that's more than I could have ever asked for." They watched Eli a little longer. He called out to them, asking Jacob to help him build a roof for the snow fort. Jacob smiled and walked over to him, dropping to his knees in the snow. Without hesitation, Anna stayed back, hands in her pockets, heart full and aching all at once. Later that afternoon, the four of them sat around the fireplace again. No big conversations. Just soft chatter, shared snacks, and the quiet warmth that builds when people start to feel like something more than strangers. Jacob brought out an old photo album. He handed it to Anna without a word. She opened it gently, flipping through the pages. Baby pictures, first steps, school plays. Smiles she never got to see in person, now laid out before her like pieces of a puzzle she never thought she'd touch. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't hide them. "I'm glad he had you," she whispered to the man. He nodded. And now maybe he can have both of us." She looked up at him, surprised. "You'd be okay with that?" "I want what's best for him," he said simply. "That's always been the only goal." Eli leaned against her side, watching the pictures too. "Mom, you were pretty," he said suddenly. Anna laughed through her tears. "Still am, I hope." Jacob chuckled. "You're not doing too bad." The moment was small, but it held something rare, something real. Not just forgiveness, but understanding. A shared space between broken pasts and an unknown future. They stayed like that a while longer, flipping pages, telling stories, and letting time pass without pressure. Not rushing toward answers, not searching for perfect endings, just being there together. A few days later, the snow began to melt. Just a little at first, icicles dripping, rooftops shedding their frozen coats. The roads became visible again, patches of pavement peeking through the white. The world was slowly waking up from the quiet. That winter had wrapped it in. Inside the house, it felt like something else was beginning to thaw, too. The mornings no longer started in silence. There was the sound of Eli's bare feet padding down the hallway, the low murmur of coffee brewing, the occasional laugh, quiet and cautious, but real. It had started to feel like a home where life happened, not just where time passed. Anna. Was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup when Jacob walked in. He leaned against the counter and watched her work. "You always cook this much?" he asked. "Only when I'm nervous," she said, half smiling. He raised an eyebrow. "You're still nervous?" She glanced at him, then nodded. "A little. I'm trying not to be. But being here, with you, with your father, it still feels like a dream I might wake up from." Jacob grabbed an apple from the bowl on the counter and took a bite. "Well, if this is a dream, you're doing a decent job keeping everyone fed." She laughed softly, stirring again. "I guess food is how I show I care." He studied her for a moment. "You don't have to prove anything. Not with soup. Not with words. I see you, Anna." She stopped stirring. He had never called her by her name before. Hearing it from him, it meant something. She looked at him, eyes full of something she wasn't sure she could name. Gratitude, yes, but something deeper too. A sense that maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to let her in. That afternoon, the man came in from town with the mail. He placed a few envelopes on the table, but one caught his attention. He handed it to Anna. "It's addressed to you." She frowned. "No one even knows I'm here." He didn't say anything, just waited. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single folded sheet. She read it once, then again. Her hand started to shake. "What is it?" the man asked. She handed it to him. Her voice caught in her throat. "It's from Eli's father." Jacob looked up from the couch. "What does he want?" The man read the note carefully, his jaw tightening slightly. "He says he knows where you are," he said. "That he wants Eli back. That if you don't bring him, he'll come himself." Anna sat down slowly, her face pale. "I don't know how he found me. I've changed numbers. Moved cities." Jacob stood. "Do you think he'll actually show up?" She nodded barely. "If he said he will, he probably will." The tension in the room grew thick. Eli wasn't there. He was upstairs, playing with toy blocks in the guest room, but even without him hearing it, his future now hung in the balance of one bitter man's threat. "We need to be ready," the man said. "If he shows up here, we're not letting him near Eli, not without a fight." Anna looked down at her hands. "I don't want to drag anyone else into this." Jacob knelt in front of her. "You didn't drag anyone, he did, and we're not letting him hurt you, not again, not ever." She nodded slowly, eyes filling with tears. Over the next 2 days they prepared quietly. No panic, just quiet planning. The man called an old friend who worked in law enforcement, explained the situation. They gathered every document Anna had, school, records, medical files, anything that showed she had been Eli's sole guardian since the day he was born. They locked the front gate for the first time in years. Jacob stayed close to his mother and brother, watching over them with a protectiveness that surprised even him. On the third morning, a car pulled up. It wasn't loud. It didn't come crashing in. It just stopped at the end of the driveway, engine running. Anna saw it from the kitchen window. Her breath caught. "That's him," she said. Jacob moved quickly, grabbing his coat and heading for the door. The man stepped beside him. "Let me talk to him first." Jacob shook his head. "We do this together." Outside, the wind had picked up. The man stepped forward, Jacob beside him, both of them standing firm as the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, clean-shaven, well-dressed, but his face carried a sharpness like someone used to getting what he wanted. "I'm here for my son," he said plainly. "He's not your son." The man replied. "I'm on the birth certificate," the stranger said, "and unless you want the law involved, I suggest you hand him over." Jacob stepped forward. "Go ahead. Involve the law. We've already called." They know everything. And trust me, once they hear how you treated them, you'll be lucky to walk away without a case." The man looked between them, realizing this wasn't going to be easy. He tried to smirk, but it faltered. "She ran," he said, pointing at Anna, who was now visible through the window. "She took him." "She saved him," Jacob snapped. "You have no right." Jacob stepped closer. "You lost your right. The day you chose fear over love, he's not going anywhere." The stranger glared at them, but something shifted. He realized, maybe for the first time, that he was outnumbered. Not in strength, but in truth. He didn't speak again. Just got back in his car, slammed the door, and drove off. Inside, Anna stood frozen, hand on her chest. She had braced for a storm, but what she got was something she never expected. Someone standing up for her, and someone standing between Eli and the past she thought she'd never escape. The wind outside settled into a soft hush after the car disappeared down the snowy road. But inside the house, everything felt charged, like something had just cracked open and changed shape. Anna stood by the window, still holding her breath, her hand resting on the curtain like she wasn't sure it was really over. Jacob stepped through the door first. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, his jaw still tight. The man followed behind him, slower, older, but just as steady. Neither of them spoke at first. Anna looked at them both, her eyes wide, glassy, brimming with the weight of what almost happened. "Is he gone?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Jacob nodded. "He won't be back." She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but nothing came. Instead, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around Jacob without thinking. He stood still for a moment, then let himself lean into the hug. It was the first time they'd touched, truly touched, and he didn't pull away. Behind them, the man looked on quietly, letting the moment unfold without interrupting it. His presence, as always, said more than words. Eli peeked out from the hallway. He had heard the tension, felt it even if he didn't fully understand it. Anna let go of Jacob and turned to her son, crouching down to meet his eyes. "It's okay," she said softly, brushing his hair back. "We're okay." Eli nodded and without a word ran into her arms. She held him tightly, pressing her lips to his forehead. Her eyes closed. Her fingers trembled as they ran through his hair. That boy, her entire reason for leaving, for hiding, for surviving, was still here, still safe. Later that evening, the fireplace burned low, casting soft light across the living room. The mood had shifted again, this time into something quiet, reflective. No one said much, but the air no longer felt tense, just still and full of unspoken things that didn't need to be rushed. Jacob sat on the edge of the couch, flipping through. The same photo album from before. His fingers paused on one picture, a birthday party, candles mid-blow, frosting on his nose. He turned it slightly toward Anna. "That was my 8th birthday," he said. "Dad got me a remote-control truck. I crashed it into the kitchen wall." Anna smiled. "You always liked trucks?" "Always," he said. "Still do." She nodded. "I wondered what your favorite things were. What made you laugh? If you liked stories or music or drawing." "I liked dinosaurs for a while, then space. Then I got into photography." "Photography?" "Yeah, I like capturing moments, things people forget to notice." He looked at her after saying that, and she knew he didn't just mean photographs. He meant this, her, the lost details, the small truths. Anna looked down, at her hands. "I wish I had pictures of you as a baby. I wish I could remember how you looked when you first smiled. How you gave that smile to someone else to see," Jacob said gently. "But I still have it, it's part of me." She looked up, surprised by the tenderness in his voice. "I used to think that smile didn't belong to anyone," he added. "But now I know where it came from." There was something in her eyes then, a mixture of heartbreak and healing, a look that said she had waited nearly 2 decades to hear something like that. Eli, curled up in a blanket beside her, suddenly sat up. "Can we all stay here forever?" he asked. The room got quiet. Jacob glanced at the man. The man looked at Anna, and for a moment no one knew what to say. Anna smiled and pulled Eli closer. "I don't know about forever, sweetheart," she said, but maybe we can stay long enough to see what happens next." "I like it here," Eli said. "It feels like warm." Jacob ruffled his hair. "That's how it's supposed to feel." The man finally spoke, his voice soft but sure. "You're both welcome to stay as long as you need. This house has room, and it hasn't felt this full in a long time." Anna looked at him, the man who had unknowingly raised her child with love and patience. She saw something in his eyes that made her throat tighten, a quiet invitation, not out of pity, not out of duty, but out of understanding. "I don't want to be a burden," she said. "You're not," he replied. "You're part of the story now." They sat there for a while, letting those words settle. The fire crackled gently, and outside the snow had stopped. The trees were still, standing guard under a soft layer of frost. Eli had drifted off again, his head in Anna's lap. She stroked his hair, humming a quiet tune she used to sing years ago when no one else was around to hear. A lullaby meant only for him. The sound of it now was different, braver, fuller, no longer wrapped in fear. Jacob closed the photo album and leaned back, his eyes on the ceiling. "Funny how things work out," he said. "You go your whole life wondering about a piece of your past, and then it shows up at your front door in the middle of a snowstorm." Anna looked at him. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "No," he said, smiling faintly, "but maybe it happened the only way it could." The firelight flickered, casting golden shapes across the walls. The old house, once quiet and cold, now felt like it had a heartbeat again, not loud, not rushed, but steady. And for the first time in years, no one felt like they were waiting for something to go wrong.